Hi guys, and welcome back to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. We are back, and I've got a bit of explaining to do. Okay guys, so you may well have listened to my last sort of mini podcast that I think came out end of January, somewhere around there, explaining a little bit about why the podcast had disappeared for a while and where it had gone, what was sort of basically going on. Cut a long story short, my youngest son, who had just turned 2 at the end of January, got diagnosed with leukemia. So as a family, we've had a lot to deal with, as you can imagine, I'm sure. That coupled with the fact that I also started a brand new job at the beginning of February, working with ODK here in the UK, has basically meant that I've been absolutely slammed in times of time and emotional effort and all that sort of thing. So please accept my apologies. I will get a little bit more into kind of the backstory of things as we go into the podcast, but the intention is that we are going to be back now. I'm going to try and get a podcast out every week. On this show, we have got Sam, our previous co-host, rejoining us to talk about a brand new project that he's got going on, the Vanguard bar. It's been open now for over a year. So we'll get a little update from Sam with his brand new project, which is very exciting. We spent some time down at the Vanguard, and I'm also going to talk a little bit more about the future of what Bartender HQ is going to become going forward, because things are going to change a little bit. There's probably going to be some changes, certainly with YouTube and some of the other stuff, which you may or may not like, and if you don't, I'm really sorry, but it's my thing, so I'm going to do what I want. So, the Ted story. My little boy, Ted, went into hospital on the 10th of January this year, 2019, with elevated heart rate and temperature. We went to the GPs first, the general practitioner, our sort of family physician. Well, my wife took him down there, came back out with a letter saying we've been referred to the hospital, so we're going down there. Opened the letter and it said suspected sepsis. Now, sepsis is something that you do not want to be messing with. It is, even in small children, quite often, I don't want to say quite often fatal, but 10-15% of cases can be life-threatening at least. So that was a big shock. We were admitted to the hospital. There were various scans done. It turned out there was some infection in one of his knees, so we went in for surgery, had the knee drained. Then we had a week of IV antibiotics, and came out at the end of that week with more oral antibiotics for him, thinking that essentially he was going to be pretty much fixed by that. He'd had his leg in a cast for a week, so that he wouldn't be moving that knee after he'd had the surgery. And it was a pretty horrific week, to be honest, on the wards. I mean, as much as it's a modern hospital, you're still kind of in like just a curtained off bed bay and things like that. In the UK, obviously, we have the NHS, so we weren't financially put out, other than the fact that we were having to park in expensive car parks and buy food out and about. We don't have any medical bills to pay or anything like that. Please don't worry about that. There were some very generous donations, not only to a fund that was set up by my sister-in-law, which actually came directly to us, but also we put a fundraiser link via the Facebook thing when we were talking about what was going on for the Children's Hospital. That raised £370, so I guess about $500 for the Children's Hospital, which they've now received, and that's gone actually to the ward that we ended up in later. So as I say, we were admitted originally for this one thing, for the sepsis, for this septic arthritis, and then we ended up leaving the hospital, coming out for a week after the after those antibiotics were finished. His temperature came back immediately, but we were already scheduled to go back into the hospital the following day. We had some blood tests done. They admitted us and essentially said that they suspected that he had ALL leukemia, which is the most common kind, I believe, in children of his age. Bearing in mind he only turned 2 at the beginning of January. This is now towards the end of January. I think we're around about the 20th, 25th of January, something like that. Ended up having all the scans, all of the surgeries to confirm things, but yeah, essentially he had ALL leukemia. We were moved up to the brand new leukemia ward, the brand new cancer ward in the Children's Hospital, which I think was about 8 months old. And we spent the best part of the next month there. If you saw, there was a video that I put up on the ODK Mixers Facebook page when I first joined the team on the 1st of February, I think it was, and it looks like I'm in this lovely office block. I was actually in the family room of the hospital, so at the end of the ward where I could make a cup of coffee. There was no one in there at the time, so I filmed that and got that out. But essentially we ended up spending a month there. He was in surgery once a week. Everything went really well. At the 2-week stage, they're normally hoping that the cancer cells will be down to around about 25% of his bone marrow, and the test came back and it was 6%. So they'd absolutely blasted it with the chemotherapy and all of the stuff that he was having. At the 4-week stage, they would be hoping to get it down to 5%, and I'm happy to report that once we got to 4 weeks, his number was technically 0. He's been categorised as low residual disease, low risk. But essentially all of the potentially the best things that could have happened in terms of the leukemia have happened. There was a few kind of missteps, I think, with his knee, where because he was being transferred from one department to another and going into oncology, there was some kind of overlap there. But other than that, he's back up on his feet now. He's walking. He's back at home with us and has been for the last month that we haven't had to actually take him in for any overnighters. We've been back in since we were discharged originally, I think 4 times for 2 nights at a time, the first 3 and then 6 nights. He's had to have a couple of blood transfusions, all that kind of thing. If you are humanly capable of giving blood, I highly recommend it, especially having seen the difference that it makes when it's required. And if you already give blood, then thank you. So that's kind of where we are now. As I mentioned as well, I did start a new role with ODK during this time. So just to add a bit more complexity to what's going on, I've been out and about on the road with ODK up and down the country, trying to introduce it to new people, new bartenders, new purchasing managers, all that kind of thing. If you work in a company where you happen to throw away, in the UK this is, if you work in a company that you happen to use a prepackaged fruit puree or citrus juices or anything like that, and you tend to throw some away because of shelf life issues, then definitely hit me up in the comments and I would love to come and show you what ODK can do for you. They have massive shelf lives and it kills all of the wastage that you might be having at the moment. So I think if you would find that useful for your bar, if you would like some better margins because you're not throwing things away and closing that gap between your theoretical and your actual margin, ODK can help. So moving on from that, we've got Sam coming up on the podcast, so we're going to go over to Sam. I sat down with Sam at the Vanguard earlier this week, and we had a good chat about the Modern Mead Company, which is his brand new venture. He has run the Vanguard, which is a modern cocktail and mead bar, for the past year, just over a year now, and his next venture is actually creating their own mead in partnership with a meadery over here, and I'll let Sam explain that to you.
Sure. I'll have a Red Bull as well, old man. Thanks. So I can't sit and listen to you for 40 minutes or not.
No, absolutely. Are you ready? You good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Welcome to the BartenderHQ.com podcast, sponsored by Red Bull. It's not sponsored by Red Bull.
YouTube's going to take you down for that.
Yeah. Cool, so that's going to be the main camera.
Cool.
But we've just got a whole studio set up. It's cool. We are here for the Bartender HQ podcast with Sam Boulton back at the Vanguard here in Birmingham. Sam, good to have you back, mate. You used to be on the show all the time, didn't you?
Yeah, back when I had time.
Yeah.
And wanted to talk to you.
And then you've opened a bar and you're doing something else new now. So tell us what you are up to.
Yeah, so as some people, if they've been around long enough, will know, I opened a bar called the Vanguard Bar in Birmingham. We are the UK's first and only cocktail bar and meadery that has gone down a storm. Now, it's hasn't all been amazing. There's a lot of things with opening a small business that take time, but the amount of mead that we have sold has been phenomenal. It has been something we couldn't have anticipated the success of. Now, everything else went as probably as we thought it would. It's taken time to grow. However, the mead sales have been strong kind of from the get-go, to the point of where there has been Saturdays where we have sold one cocktail and taken all our money in mead basically. So that has kind of been festering and growing, and we were kind of thinking about where we want to go as a company and what we want to do next. And one bar's great, 2 bars would be great, but there's only one of me. I can't be physically at each venue. So we were thinking, right, how can we grow what we want to do? And the kind of obvious thing was to kind of bring mead to the UK. And without that being a bar, we wanted to do that through creating our own brand. So we have now started the Mead Co, which is our brand and our company. So it is the idea or the concept for Mead Co is that we take ancient classic recipes and we recreate them for the modern palate. Now there are a few companies that have done similar things, but what we want to do is kind of grow and kind of recreate things that have been forgotten. There are many types of styles of mead that haven't been recreated, that aren't available. They might have been done in small batches by people. I found a couple of our ideas had been done before in small one-off releases, and what we want to do is create them to have them permanently available again.
Yeah.
Essentially wake them back up and bring them back to life, but also doing that in a way that the modern palate can accept them, because obviously a lot of these recipes are dating back hundreds of years and palates have changed a lot since then.
Yeah. So let's just, from the start, what is mead, just for anyone that's never heard of mead at all?
So it's kind of different around the world. It depends on where you are. In general, it is any kind of alcohol made from honey. Now that can be varies in strength, varies in sweetness, varies in style. You can have carbonated, uncarbonated. You can have flavoured, unflavoured. In Europe and Asia, and basically in everywhere other than the United States, there is no kind of strict definition on it. It can be any alcohol made from honey, and it's just generally accepted that is mead. Although you would get into, so for instance, if you were to make a highly rectified spirit from honey, that wouldn't be classed as a mead.
So it could still be a vodka, basically from a honey base, but it wouldn't be a mead.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a mead then, but it's kind of a grey area on the legislation because there isn't any. So it's up to the customer's perception and what they kind of want to gauge it as, and the producer and what they want to call it. You could, in the UK, legally produce a vodka and call it a mead.
Okay.
Well, that wouldn't be accepted on the market at all as a mead, but you could do that at the moment.
Are there any spirits that are fermented from honey and then distilled?
From what I believe, yes. There's a couple of gins out there that do that. There's a company called the Honey Spirits Company, but I'm not 100% sure on how much of their base fermentation is just honey. I have a feeling that they put honey in the base fermentation, but it's not solely honey.
Okay.
But then, like I said, they distill it, so it comes out, by the time they're finished, it just is a gin.
Cool.
So in the United States, they do have legislation. It's one thing that America's kind of the forefront of the mead revolution at the moment. They've So they do have legislation. Their legislation's not super restrictive, but also restrictive enough to define a category. So that it has to be made from 51% or more of honey. What that means is the fermentable sugar from the base fermentation. So whatever they ferment to create the alcohol from, that has to be 51% or more of honey.
Yeah.
Now that means when they fermented it, and if they're gonna sweeten it or anything after, which is quite common to do, that can be honey or sugar. They can use whatever they want. So it's as long as the base ferment is made from more predominantly honey.
Yeah. See, that reminds me of a couple of things in the States. Obviously, like 51% corn in bourbon. Is that right? And then 51% or more of agave to make something a tequila
in Mexico.
So I wonder if there's going to be like 100% honey meads, which become like the premium, or
there
something
are
along
a lot of companies around the world which firmly believe in has to be made purely from honey. Now, depending on where you are in the world, in fact, most places around the world, honey's expensive. So to make your product from 100% honey does mean that you will pay more.
Is that because there's like a minimum wage for bees now?
Basically, so there's just not as many of them.
Okay.
So they don't make as much, therefore it goes up in price.
I see.
But I'm a firm believer that 100% honey doesn't necessarily mean better, and this is where a lot of meat producers will argue with me and believe I'm not right, but each to their own. I firmly believe that honey as a flavour and as an ingredient is great. It tastes of honey, it's sweet, it's lovely. When you ferment that and take out those sugars, what you're left with is the chemical composition that creates the structure of honey without the sweetness, and that doesn't taste very nice.
Okay.
It doesn't taste of much really. Kind of tastes almost like acetane or nail polish remover, very chemically. Even though it's a natural product, that's what it tastes like. So when you use 100% honey and you ferment it to 0 sugar content to get the most amount of alcohol, which is what everyone will do because they're going to make the most of their money, that means what you're left with isn't very nice flavoured. So a couple of ways around that is to re-sweeten it with honey, which again is adding more cost in, and it ends up being a very costly product, and I don't personally believe it's the best tasting.
Okay.
Now, there are a few people that do, they stick to the rules, it's 51% and then the rest is some kind of sugar or whatever. You can use any sweetener you want. You could use agave, you could use regular honey, you could use sugar-sweetened corn syrup, whatever you want really. The general being the less honey you're using, the worse the product is. Again, I don't believe that's true. I think it's the final product should be what you define it, not its production, within reason. So I think that there's a 80 to 20, 75 to 25. That's kind of a good mark. But again, everybody does their own. I've had some 100% honeys which blew my mind, and I've had 51% honeys which again were fantastic.
Cool. The mead that you're making with the Modern Mead Company, talk us through a little bit about where the recipe for that's come through from and how you've developed that.
So we looked at a lot of styles and what's out there and what consumers are drinking and what you can get and can't get on the market quite good. And the two popular ones you get are the three popular ones you get are Melomel, Hydromels and Metheglins. Hydromel tends to be the regular name for a normal mead, just means there's it's what you'd normally regard to as a standard mead.
Okay.
Melomel means there's some kind of fruit element to it, and Metheglin means that there's a spiced element to it. Now, there are a lot of really good Melomels on the UK market, and we've looked around the world, there's a lot of good Melomels. Metheglins I've had have very hit and miss. Now, the definition for a metheglin is just a mead with added spices. Now, that can be whatever you want. I know there's a guy creating one using tea at the moment, which is coming out, and I'm really excited to try that. There are some that use hard spices, there are some that use a mixture of tea and spices, some that use just purely kind of more botanicals rather than hard spices, so more like fir and juniper and whatnot. So I think it's when we looked at it, that was the kind of category that we thought it wasn't quite fleshed out enough.
Yeah.
And we thought it's quite an easy starting point in terms of story, product history, because there are some very weird ones that we will eventually produce and go into, but we don't think that they're going to be as readily accepted.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is kind of lay the foundation of what we are, who we are, what we're doing, and then we'll bring in the less acceptable styles, if you will.
More niche styles.
Yeah, the more niche stuff that won't necessarily fly off the shelf, but we believe that people will still enjoy.
Okay.
So we started with a metheglin. So our metheglin is our honey base is Mexican and English and a few other honeys. So the way that honey works around the world is you have almost like you have blenders in whiskey, you have blenders in honey. And basically companies will buy tons of different honeys, they'll buy whatever they can, they'll vet it and check that what they're buying is what they say they're getting, check it for allergens and stuff like that. They will then blend, because it's been a natural product, just like wine, it changes year on year. It changes every season that bees produce, it changes flavour. So you could buy the same honey from the same place 10 times. So what we're kind of trying to challenge with people is that perception of where do you get your honey from?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't necessarily, we don't necessarily get it from one place. We buy a style of honey which is blended. So as is predominantly Mexican honey, the reason we work with Mexican honey is it's not as sweet as other honeys. It's got more citrus to it, and the bees over there, the bees that they have in Mexico as well, a lot of them don't sting. So the Mayans 3,000 years ago genetically modified them to remove the sting. So it means that they don't need gassing to harvest the honey, so the health of the bees is way better. It also means that because they don't have natural defence, they're more vulnerable to other species, so the beekeepers give way more care from other predators and things like that to keep the hives healthy. So they're some of the best kept bees in the world. So that's an industry that we felt was really good and we want to support. And the quality of the honey that comes out of these bees is just completely different to anything else.
And so is the flavour of the honey, is that defined by location because of the kind of flowers that they go into?
I think it's a mixture of the kind of flowers. The bees are very small and that plays a part in it. So I think it's a load of different factors that come into it, but yeah, the style of honey, it literally tastes like you took honey and added a load of lemon juice into it. Okay. So it's like sweet and sour at the same time.
Cool.
So that's why we're going with blend. It's a blend of predominantly Mexican honey. There's a little bit of English in there because we have, as you pointed out, a completely different fauna over here. And then it's balanced out using other products around the world to give a consistent style.
Yeah.
So the actual percentages will change every time, and I think it's a very consumer thing to want to know. They want to know the exact dairy that you buy the honey from, or the exact part of the world that you get it from. And actually, in the honey world, that's not quite how it works. You can get like Spanish blossom honey, but it wouldn't be from one aviary if it's a consistently large product. So yes, that's kind of the honey. We then take that, we ferment that, and in the fermentation we have cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, cardamom, orange zest, and lemon zest.
Okay.
And that is there are main flavouring botanicals. So that kind of gives it. I'm trying not to say a Christmas feel to it because it's more citrusy than what you'd think from kind of a mulled wine or something like that. But it is in the UK anyway. There's quite common Christmas spices. So then we ferment that. The final product is then back sweetened. So ours is definitely a sweeter style. Some people describe it as dessert wine style. I wouldn't personally describe it. I'd describe it similar to dessert wine, but it's not as sweet. This is a product that you can drink a couple of glasses of. Yeah. If you want, whereas dessert wine, a Sauternes or a PX sherry or whatever you're having, probably wouldn't drink more than 50, 80 ml at a time. So ours is nowhere near as sweet as that, but it is on the sweeter side. Yeah. So some people describe it as dessert wine style.
Cool. And what would you recommend people do? Like, if you've never tasted mead before, how do you guys recommend drinking it? I know you've got some like signature cocktails that you've come up with.
Yeah, I'd definitely say mead can be drunk on its own at any point. It's always drinkable on its own. It's completely your preference how you do. So our 2 signature serves that we have with it, we do recommend trying it neat, but then we also recommend trying as a long drink with ginger ale. So that can be a large measure, your kind of preference on the size. You know, if you wanted to, you could do like 1/3 mead, 2/3 ginger ale, but again, that's on personal preference on that one. The other one that we've got is our mead mosa, and this is 2 parts mead, 2 parts prosecco or sparkling wine or champagne or your choice of preference, and 1 part fresh orange juice, and that's kind of our go-to, really approachable, consumer-friendly signature serve that we think will go down well with the masses. Because another part that I didn't kind of explain, part of the modern Mead Co is we're not aiming for the traditional mead market here in the UK, and when we go around the world, we're not trying to just focus on where people are currently buying mead. We want to introduce it to more people. So everything we're trying to do is about being as approachable from, you know, the general Joe who probably would never think of buying a mead but might be interested in it because of its historical links. So we're trying to make everything we can kind of as much about letting the customer decide as well as pushing them in the right direction to what we think they'll like.
Cool. And I know you created a mead colada as well and some other stuff. So
yeah, so what we found in general in the bar is that people really like and enjoy mead when it's put into classic drinks. So as you said, we've done the mead colada, we've done mead espresso martinis, we've done a mead negroni. We found that those kind of soften the choice for a customer, because they could go for a wacky mead cocktail that we've created that is fantastic, but actually it's a bit more approachable to put them into drinks that they're familiar with.
So they're kind of seeing the difference with mead rather than...
exactly. I think that kind of helps them appreciate it a bit more, especially when they're being introduced in a cocktail first. When you have it on its own first, you can kind of understand the products quite easily.
Yeah, you offer flights and things here.
Yeah, I think for a consumer who's never had it, I suppose it'd be like if you've only ever drank gin all your life, or sorry, vodka all your life, and then somebody put gin into one of your drinks, it would make it more understandable the differences that it makes. So that's kind of, we found, a really useful tool is to use mead in classic drinks. And the mead colada sold fantastically. And hopefully the mead mosa will do just as well.
Awesome. And where can people find more information about the Modern Mead Company and so on online?
So we're on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. We're at Modern Mead Co. We're at www.modernmeadco.com, and you can follow us on Facebook and message us directly if you've got any questions.
And how long until you think it's going to be released out to the market?
Fingers crossed in the next 6 to 8 weeks is what we're aiming for.
And that'll be in the UK initially?
That'll be initially in the UK. Export markets will come as time goes, as we find the right partners to work with.
So if you are an importer in in another country, get in touch with Sam. Buy his mead, sell it in your countries.
Definitely.
That'd be good. Cool, Sam, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you back on the show, mate, and let's not make it too long. Till the next time.
So thanks again to Sam for sharing his story of the Modern Mead Company. It's been really fun. I've got a little bit involved. I've sort of advised a little bit on some of the marketing things that they've been doing, some of the ways that they've been getting things set up, just purely from stuff that I've done in the past. And I mean, Sam's been a huge help to me when I worked at Catalyst as well as at ODK in terms of connecting me with accounts that I might not otherwise find. So it's great to be able to return a little bit of that favour. Now, if you are interested, head over to modernmeadco.co.uk, I believe it is. I will put the link in the show notes on bartenderhq.com. You can find everything over there. And we will make this bartenderhq.com/mead. That will be the best way to get to the show notes for this episode and find out everything you need to about Sam's new venture. If you can support it, if you're in the UK and you would like to buy a bottle, it will be going on sale probably within the next 6 or so weeks. If you are outside the UK and you know an importer that would be interested in something like this, then certainly get in touch with the guys over there and they will be delighted delighted to have a conversation with you. We have got some guests lined up for the next few shows. Fingers crossed everything comes off. I don't really want to be doing too many solo shows because I think the ones where we have a guest are much more dynamic, much more interesting for you guys. And I did want to mention as well, the YouTube channel, the name has changed. The name has changed to my name, so it is now David Eden-Sangwell. You can still find it by going to bartenderhq.com/YouTube. But the only reason I've changed the name of it is it's still going to contain all of the content from Bartender HQ, but it's also going to contain other stuff that I want to do that doesn't necessarily pertain to bartending. So I just want to make sure that my channel is kind of for me, and it's a place for me to express the stuff that I do that's not bartending, because Bartender HQ is a huge part of my life, ODK is a huge part of my life, and also I've been working a few shifts at TGI Fridays on the Hagley Road back there behind the bar, and throwing bottles around, so I have kind of been re-experiencing those issues that bartenders have. So I've got some cool stuff that I want to talk about. However, bartending does not cover everything that I do, so I'm also into Marvel stuff and DC stuff and Apple and a whole bunch of other stuff. I used to play paintball all over the place. So there's going to be some other stuff that goes into the channel that hopefully will open up a little bit more about me, and there'll probably be some updates about Ted and stuff like that. Bartender HQ, the website and the podcast will stay primarily bartending related, but there will be some other stuff that goes up through our YouTube channel, which I will share through my personal Facebook probably. But if there's stuff there that I think that you bartenders would enjoy, I will also chuck that out through the Facebook page and Twitter and stuff. So that is what's going on with me and Bartender HQ. If you are a bartender with an awesome story, I would love to hear from you, and we would love to have you on the podcast to talk about your history in bartending, what you've been doing, and why your story is cool. So hit me up, it's david@bartenderhq.com, and I would love to chat to you. Or if you know something else that you want to hear more about, let me know that too. I've been David Eden-Sangwell for the Bartender HQ podcast, and thank you for your patience.